You know, we say we love God. We say that we give him our all and we give him our best and we would lay down our life for him. We say that nothing but the best for our God and that we put our best foot forward, give our 110%. But that's not always true. Why is it that we feel that we can give God our second best? Why is it that we feel that we can just give God whatever we want and it'll be okay and God will be pleased with that, even if it's not up to par, not up to snuff, that it's not the best? If it's secondhand, that God's going to say, oh, well, I know your heart. I know you wanted to give your best, but you just couldn't, so it's okay. No problems there. What am I talking about? Well, let me just give you one example. My wife and I used to work at a children's home, and it was a Christian children's home, and oftentimes people would donate to the children's home. They would donate clothes. But more often than not, sadly, they would offer the secondhand and hand-me-downs, which there's nothing wrong with that, but they weren't offering their best hand-me-downs. They were offering like crocheted things that grandma made, ugly sweaters that grandma made, stuff from the 50s, 60s, and 70s that no teenager would be caught dead in. And I'm not saying that the teenagers there at the children's home had to wear the name brands, but you at least had to be in style or you would set yourself up for, getting made fun of or ridicule. And we weren't going to subject our children at the children's home to that. They didn't have to have top of the line or top dollar or name brands, but you just wanted them, to look modern and fit in. And people would offer these clothes to them, thinking that, oh, they're so poor, they'll wear it. They're so poor, they need it. They'll appreciate it. No, to be honest with you, what we did is we gave it to another thrift store if we knew that our children wouldn't wear it or couldn't wear it. Or if it was just plain out trash or junk that was unusable, we would throw it in the trash. Now, these same people who donated these second-hand hand-me-downs or these not their best hand-me-downs, I'm sure that they took their best and saved it for their own yard sale and got a pretty penny for it, most likely. So it's really sad that we have gotten somehow in this vein of thought that it doesn't matter what we offer to the Lord, at least we're offering something and he's going to be happy and he's going to be pleased with it. No, God wants and deserves our best. In Romans 12:1-2, it talks about being a living sacrifice. In other words, giving our blood, sweat, and tears, and everything that we say and do, giving of our best material goods and resources for the service of the Lord and for the work of the Lord. He deserves our best, but oftentimes he just gets second best. Sadly, we see that Israel fell into this same vein of thought, and we read this in the book of Malachi. But first, I want to present to you the standard that God has set for giving to him, for offering to him, to sacrificing to him. And that's found in Leviticus chapter 22, verses 17-22. And it says, Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and to his sons, and to all Bnei Israel, all the children of Israel, and say to them, Whoever is from the house of Israel, or one of the outsiders in Israel, who brings his offering, whether it be any of their vows or any of their freewill offerings that they present to Adonai for a burnt offering, for you to be accepted, you are to offer a male without blemish from the bulls, the sheep, or the goats. So this animal had to be the best of the best. Whether it be a bull, a sheep, or a goat, it couldn't have any cuts or scars. It couldn't have any injuries, any wounds, any open sores, any sickness, any disease, any broken bones, couldn't have cataracts. I mean, there couldn't be anything wrong with this animal. It had to be the utmost perfect A1 specimen of that species of animal. It had to be the best. And verse 20 says, But whatever has a blemish, you are not to present, for it will not be accepted on your behalf. Just like these people donating ratty, crappy clothes to the children's home that nobody would wear or be caught dead in, or were unwearable or unusable or, decades out of date, they weren't accepted by the children's home. They were either thrown away or they were given to some sort of thrift store. So we go on to read, Whoever brings a sacrifice of fellowship offerings to fulfill to fulfill a vow or a freewill offering, either from the herd or the flock, it must be unblemished to be accepted. There must be no defect on it. Now, what are we talking about? What do we mean? Define an unacceptable sacrifice. Define a defect. Define a blemish. Well, verse 22 does that. The blind, injured, maimed, having an abnormal growth or a festering or running sore are not to be offered to Adonai or given as an offering by fire on the altar to Adonai. In other words, these things, will not be accepted. And verse 24 says, whatever has its testicles bruised, crushed, broken, or cut, you are not to offer to Adonai, nor are you to do so in your own land. These are second best. These are the second hand-me-downs, if you will, the unacceptable hand-me-downs that people try to offer to the Lord. He says, no, I want your best. And the Lord takes up a beef with his people in Malachi chapter 1, beginning with verse 6. And it says, a son honors his father, and a servant his master. So if I am father, where is my honor? Now this is God talking here. If I am master, where is my reverence? Says Adonai Tzevaot, says Adonai, the Lord of hosts. You Kohanim, you priest, who despise my name. But you say, how did we despise your name? And the Lord answers in verse 7, by offering defiled bread on my altar. But you say, how did we defile you? When you say, the table of Adonai is despicable. Verse 8, when you bring a blind one as a sacrifice, is it not wrong? Or when you bring a lame or sick one, is it not wrong? I mean, verse 8 harkens back to the passage we just read in Leviticus 22 that says, these are the things that disqualify a sacrifice. These are the things that make it blemished and unacceptable as a sacrifice. Don't bring them. But by the time of Malachi, they were bringing lame and emasculated and injured and sick and blind animals to sacrifice to God. And God calls them out on the carpet. And they're saying, oh, well, how did we defile you? And he says, when you bring a blind one as a sacrifice, is it not wrong? Or when you bring a lame or sick one, is it not wrong? And then God just blows them away by saying, offer them to your governor. Would he be pleased with you or acknowledge you favorably? Says Adonai Tzevaot, says Adonai, the Lord of hosts. He says, look, you're paying more deference and more respect to fallen men who were in leadership and rulership over you than me, Creator God, who created you and created these men. You are showing more respect for a fallen human being than you are for the perfect, infinite Creator of the universe, the holy God. Fallen, unholy men you're respecting more than a holy, infinite God. Would if somebody was giving something to a king or giving something to a president, I'm sure that these people who donated to the children's home wouldn't be getting their second-hand hand-me-downs, not the ratty, outdate, unusable, unwearable stuff. Oh man, no, they would go all out because they would want to impress this leader. They would want to impress this king or this president. They would want, because they know that this king or president always gets the best anyway. So how can they offer anything less? They want their gift to be talked about by him to others, how great it was, how thoughtful it was, how perfect it was, how the best it was. They don't want to be, called out on the carpet, says, how dare you bring this, piece of crap to me? Will you expect me to accept this? So this is what the Lord is saying here in verse 8. When you bring a blind one as a sacrifice, is it not wrong? Or when you bring a lame or a sick one, is it not wrong? Offer them to your governor. See what happens when you offer them to your worldly leaders, your human leaders. Would he be pleased with you or acknowledge you favorably? Says Adonai Tzevaot. So now, implore God's favor, then he be gracious to us. Then will he be gracious to us. Since this has come from your hands, he will accept it of any of you, says Adonai Tzevaot. If just one of you would shut the doors and not light my altar uselessly, I have no delight in you, says Adonai Tzevaot, nor will I accept any offering from your hand. So he's like, if you're not going to come and worship me and bring your best, I'd rather you not bring anything at all. I'd rather you just shut the doors of the temple and the tabernacle and blow out the candles and walk away and say, we're not open for business. If you're going to keep bringing lame and blind sacrifices to me, I'd just rather you not do it at all. Okay, so it goes on to say in verse 11, for from sunrise to its setting, my name will be great among the nations, and in every place incense will be offered to my name with a pure grain offering. For my name will be great among the nations, says Adonai Zevaot, the Lord of hosts. But you are profaning it when you say that the table of Adonai is defiled, and as for its fruit, its food despicable. You also say it's so tedious, and you sniff at it, says Adonai Zevaot. So you bring plunder, the lame and the sick. Then you bring them as an offering. Should I accept them at your hand, says Adonai? Moreover, cursed is a deceiver, who has in his flock a male, but makes a vow and sacrifices something blemished to my Lord. For I am a great king, says Adonai Zevaot, and my name shall be revered among the nations. You know, even pagan religions and adherents to pagan religions and non-Judeo-Christian religions, you see them poor as dirt, giving their utmost and their best to their God. I mean, they sometimes they are poor and they don't know where their next meal is coming from, but if they somehow get their hands on some gold, they'll give it to their temple in order to add it to the adornment of their temple. They will go hungry in order to glorify and magnify their faith, their religion, their God. They offer their best. How does that look on us when we don't offer our best, physically, mentally, spiritually, materialistically, financially, what have you? And we donate and give and offer to God his second best. How many times? You know, and God doesn't ask a lot. We're talking a tithe here. We're talking 10%. We're talking 1 penny out of $1. Basically, right? I mean, we're talking $1 out of 10 is all that God is asking. But yet, whenever somebody comes up on a tzedakah box or somebody, you know, sees an offering plate being passed around, they just dig for their loose change in whatever they have. You know, they don't even think about a tenth. They don't even think about giving their best. They'll say, oh, well, you know, well, God will accept this. You know, he knows I've got bills to pay. Yeah, but he promised that if you give him at least the minimum, the 10%, that God's going to provide for you. Don't worry about your bills. You give to God first, your bills will be taken care of. And I mean, I test God, prove him on this. Now, there's a guy who owns the Caterpillar company, the one that makes the big yellow machinery, you know, the big construction machinery. He's a believer, and he put God to the test. He gave to God 10%, and God blessed him. He says, well, what will happen if I give 20? What will happen if I give 30, 40, 50? And the more he gave, he realized he could not outgive God, that God would bless him and God would provide for him the more he gave. He ended up giving, you know, I can't remember the number, maybe it was 80% or maybe even 90% of his income. And he was keeping 10%. I can't remember the exact numbers here. But the point is he almost gave everything that he had to God, and yet God still took care of him. God still provided for him. He could not outgive God. When we give God our best, God will bless us. He will reward us. And we don't do it for that. We don't do it for the blessing or for the reward. We do it simply because he is worthy. We do it simply because, you know, that's what is expected of us, and that's what we should want to give to our loving, holy, infinite God. I mean, if we do this to worldly leaders and worldly authorities that we show respect to and give our best to them, how much more so should we give to the Lord our God? He is worthy. Now, you know, I mean, it's not wrong to give your second hand or your second best as long as you are giving your first and your very best. You can also give that second hand stuff too, because in Leviticus chapter 22, verse 23, it talks about a different type of sacrifice. So, you know, these burnt offerings had to be perfect and without blemish. But it says for a free will offering, or in other words, a voluntary offering, just an offering because you want to, you may present a bull or a lamb that has any deformity or lacking its parts. But for a vow, it will not be accepted. So I'm not saying that you can't give your second hand or your second best or whatever, as long as you first and foremost give your best. If you want to give something more on top of that that may not be as good as the first thing you gave, that's totally okay. And we can relate that to the verse that I just read in Leviticus chapter 22, verse 23. So may the Lord convict us about our offerings and our service to Him when we don't give and do our very best for Him. Because you know what? It's not only disrespecting God. Other people on the outside see it and say, man, these believers are cheapskates. They say they love God. They say they give their own sacrifice their all, but man, look, what they're doing is not up to snuff. It's not up to par. It's second best. It's crap. Man, I wouldn't even give this to, my king, my president, my governor, what have you. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for listening. And I just pray that the Lord has blessed you through this and that you will meditate upon this and He will convict your heart and challenge you to do and to give your very best to Him in whatever you say and do. Guys, thanks so much for listening. Go out there and have a great day. Shalom and God bless.